Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Peak Earth. I'm Case Bradford. This episode is with Noah Ryan. We discuss various ways to biohack or bioharness biology, how traveling and living a nomadic lifestyle sparks the brain and ignites the mind. We discuss building skills versus following your passion, the health of our human family, making health education approachable, impactful, and much, much more. I appreciate everyone who has left a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, shared an episode on social media. Those were all very meaningful for me. I'm grateful for everyone who is tuning in to listen. Thank you. Hope you enjoy.
I'm in Mexico City right now. I've been in Mexico for the majority of this year. I was only planning on staying in Mexico City for a month, but I think with traveling, the big thing, it's you make a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of friends, and you kind of miss that community aspect. So I found kind of building a community here in Mexico City makes me always come back. I'm not a city guy personally. I'd much rather be on the beach, but yeah, made a bunch of good friends here and just great network. So I'm in Mexico City to answer your question.
Awesome. How long have you been there?
I've been here for this time around 2 months. I spent a little bit of time in Belize. I actually went back to the States for 3 weeks to Florida, so that was pretty interesting. But I've been here 2 months. I've been traveling a lot since I've been here. I kind of just got here, put my stuff down, got an apartment, and then I've just been hopping around. There's so many places near Mexico City, Valle de Bravo, San Miguel de Allende, Acapulco is only 4 hours away. Tepoztlan is really cool. So been hopping around a lot. But yeah, I got here in, I want to say August. Yeah, August, beginning of August.
Nice. I've never been down to Mexico at all. I'm curious what Mexico City is actually like.
It's great, man. I think the perception of Mexico City is oh, it's dirty, it's dangerous. I have not found that to be the case. Granted, it's also the largest city in North America. So obviously there's going to be places that are dirty and there's going to be places that are dangerous, but it's a big city, man. It's a fucking giant city at 7,700 feet of elevation. So it's one of the highest cities ever. I used to live in Denver and it's significantly higher than that. It's in a valley. It's a very unique city. Very green though, trees everywhere. You can see in the background, that's a street and there's just trees encompassing the entire canopy. There's, a giant park. It's called Chapultepec, and they call it the forest of Chapultepec. It's the largest park within the city center. So very green unexpectedly. And I love it, man. Like I said, I'm not a city guy, but I love Mexico City.
That sounds awesome. Nothing like what I was imagining. Yeah, it's funny. It has a perception of being dirty and dangerous, but it's actually lush and sprawling. It sounds like it's a vibrant city.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There are dirty and dangerous places, but that's every city,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
I
I
know
feel more
that.
comfortable walking downtown Mexico City at night than I did, in Denver or when I lived in Minneapolis. I feel more comfortable here. So I think that's a testament to kind of what it's like here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny coming. I'm in Los Angeles, and this place has a perception of being probably sort of glamorous, but in reality, it's probably dirtier and more dangerous than Mexico City, I'd imagine.
Yeah, 100%, dude, 100%. LA, everyone here thinks LA is the Mecca too. Everyone's oh, I want to go to the United States. I want to visit LA. I want to visit Hollywood. I'm you really don't. Personally, I don't think you'd like it that much. But to each their own. I know there are some pretty cool things about LA.
Yeah, there's the section near the coast is West Los Angeles. I don't really leave there much at all. Not that I'm too I feel weird saying that as if I'm too good for the downtown and east side area, but it's not that. It's just why would I why would I leave? It's just great. I want to be near the ocean. I want to be near the coast. It gets really hot as you go east, and that's that's it. That's all there is to it. It's pretty simple for me.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it looks like you live on Venice Beach. So looks like you're a
I'm a,
little bit of a celebrity there.
I'm a couple miles away at this point, but it's easy access. I just ride my bike 15 minutes, and then it's such a fun place to be and hang out. It's where I like to spend a lot of time. So I
I
know.
don't blame you. It
Have
looks
you ever
awesome.
have you ever been to this area?
Maybe when I was like a little kid, super young, but I used to play a lot of GTA, and like that part of GTA was kind of based off of Venice Beach. So that's like all every time I think of Venice Beach, I think of GTA.
You'd enjoy it, especially the Muscle Beach area. You would, I feel like, really enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah, man, when I was a kid, I just like glorified Arnold Schwarzenegger and like old school 70s bodybuilding. So Venice Muscle Beach was like the mecca. So I definitely need to make a trip there before I die.
And you grew up in Minnesota, right?
I did, yeah. Minnesota, the suburbs of Minneapolis, which was hilarious because like you're 15 minutes away from the city, but then you're like 5 minutes away from cornfields. So it was pretty. Now that I grow up, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty interesting place to live.
Would you ever move back there, or do you see yourself kind of traveling for the rest of your life, just like staying nomadic?
Man, part of me really wants to. I would always say I'm leaving this country. I'm leaving this country. I'm leaving this state and I'm never coming back. But like the further away from it I am, the more I realize like how integral that Midwest mentality was to my upbringing and how important it is to me. Minnesota's a special place. The people are really special. The weather's awful. It's atrocious. The winters are honestly the worst thing I've ever experienced. I still have memories, like horrible memories of like my car not starting because it's so cold. But I want to get a summer home up there. Everybody, like all summer, it was all about lakes. There's like 11,000 lakes there. So like every family can have a lake pretty much. There's just a lot of houses on the lake up there. So like that was pretty integral to my childhood. All the cousins coming up and just jet skiing, tubing, all of that stuff. So I do want that. My family moved out of Minnesota. I don't blame them, but I definitely miss it now that like I have nowhere to go back to.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the cold. Growing up in New Hampshire, it was frigid, and it gives you a bit of a character, a bit of an edge, but it also isn't so pleasant to to
Yeah. It
experience.
also gives you a vitamin D deficiency. So
Yeah,
I'd rather not. I've been living tropical for like the last 2 years, and I don't see myself going back anytime soon. Other than for skiing. For skiing, but like that's for vacations. Like I'm not gonna move somewhere to ski.
yeah, yeah. How did you end up on this journey, on this lifestyle that you're currently living? I feel like it's a lot of people have this dream, and as they enter the corporate world to do what you're doing. What would you say to your younger self? How did you get started along this?
Man, I always wanted to travel a lot. I always loved traveling. When I was a kid, I spent some time in Spain with the host family for a few summers, and that was cool. But I noticed I got bored. Like I got bored when I was there because I was there for a while. I was there for almost the whole summer, and I was like in one place. I was with a relatively strict family, and I was like, okay, cool. Like traveling is awesome. This was really cool for the first week, but I hated structure. I always hated structure, and I always hated being confined. Um, but it was honestly when I went abroad in college. I studied in Bangkok for a semester, and that's when it kind of like the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, like this is crazy. Like going to this new environment has completely changed my perspective on the world. It's completely changed like who I am as an individual and how I see things. And now I'm like, I was in Bangkok, but then I go to Vietnam. I spent 2 weeks in Vietnam. I'm like, wow, like okay, cool. My my perception of everything just expanded that much more. Same thing going to Indonesia, going to all these places. I'm like, holy shit, like the more places I go, like the more like inspired I am, the more clearly I think like I think, and the more holistic my worldview is. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is kind of like how I want to live. And after that, I got back. I was going to school in Colorado at that point, and I'm like, okay, cool. I need to optimize everything for being able to live wherever and work wherever. So, I was working on my own e-commerce business at the time, like managing my own team, but like I didn't do a good job at like structuring that business. So I joined a cybersecurity startup. I'm like, all right, I'm going to optimize everything for like building skills that are effective remotely, right? So managing remote teams, right? Learning how to work asynchronously. And I started doing that all with the plans of moving back to Thailand after I graduated. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and I realized that I hated cybersecurity. And so my Thailand trip got canceled, my flight got canceled, and then I was just stuck, in an industry building software, that I just didn't like. Like I didn't like it all. It wasn't my personality. It kind of like turned me into a nerd. And I was like, I almost gave up, almost got a job, because like my flights kept on getting canceled. And then yeah, I was like, screw it. And then I just came, like, I was like, I know the only way that I'm going to make this happen is if I just book a ticket and figure things out afterwards. So I just started doing that, like book a ticket to Peru, figure everything out afterwards, book a ticket to Mexico, figure everything out before like I land, like finding apartments the day before. And like it just everything worked out.
It's awesome. I hear that. It makes me think a few things. One is that it seems like you were taking risks, like taking a pretty big risk with your life, but it also seems like you did a lot to make it more of a calculated risk. Like it sounds like you're really hedging yourself against potential drawbacks and building your skills in a way where you could be confident in taking the risk, knowing that it would unfold well.
Yeah, and it was all very calculated risks. I knew that everything I was doing was reversible, and at the end of the day, like I always had a plan B. And they say don't have a plan B. I'm like, you like fine, like do that, like burn the bridges you want. I feel comfortable with plan Bs because like if I have a plan B, everything else is extra, right? Everything else is just fun. It's possibility. It's not like stress. I don't like the whole like grind, hustle, do this or die. So like I always had a plan B. Like I always budgeted enough where it's like, okay, cool. If I make no money while I go do this, like I can still sustain myself at this lifestyle level for this period of time. And I always had like those skill sets in the back. I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, like I fail, I just go and I get like a job selling software, like a very well paying job that leverages skills that will apply to me regardless of what I do. So it's not just like the money aspect, it's the skill building aspect. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was all pretty calculated.
You seem like a real driven guy. Like you've got a great self-awareness of the different ways to be successful at life and you're really pushing from all fronts, all angles to be like a fully self-realized individual. Is that something you've always had within you, or is it something that kind of came online later in life?
Man, that's interesting. I don't know. I've always wanted, like, I think my biggest fear has always been untapped potential, right? Like, not reaching my full potential. It terrifies me. It always terrifies me. But like in terms of drive, like I'm not like goal oriented. I'm not like I want to hit this amount of, revenue this month or like I want to hit these goals. It's kind of like I just like I really think I just go with the flow and like do things intuitively. It's like I kind of like this is who I want to be. Let me test out things like this, really just focusing on self-awareness and like realizing like yeah, I guess I wouldn't call myself driven. I'd say I'm curious. Honestly, I think that's what it comes down to. I wish I was more driven. I wish I was more like A type, linear thinking, goal oriented, but I'm not. I honestly just the way that I picture it is like I just kind of wander and like figure things out on the go.
That's a great way to go. Yeah, it's powerful because it gives you sort of a more natural, I guess, progression as opposed to forcing yourself down a path that may not be right for you at the end of the day. I think there's so many stories of people who went hard and then they realized when they're at the top of the ladder that the ladder was at, leaning against the wrong rooftop and they're like, damn, why I spent, all this energy climbing when I didn't even stop to think what actually lights me up.
Yeah, 100%. And I used to be envious of those people that could just sit down and grind, right? Like I went to school originally. I was planning on going to law school, and I saw the people that I was going to school with in undergrad, and like they just were okay with sitting down and reading, 150 pages of the most boring legalese ever. And I would ask them, I'm like, "Do you enjoy this stuff?" And one of my buddies, who's now in law school, he's doing really, really well, because he's one of those type A guys. And I was like, "Do you enjoy this?" He's like, "No, I hate it. Like, I hate all of this stuff." I'm like, "Why do you do it?" He's like, "Because I want a boat and I want a Toyota Land Cruiser." And I'm like, man, like the goal oriented nature of that is just so crazy. For me, I can't do it, dude. I can't work on things that I'm not like fully interested in. And I know if I do try to work on things that I'm not 100% interested in, I'm not going to do my best. And like that's the worst. That's like the biggest fear is like not doing your best. So yeah, it's really not a choice for me. It's just like I physically can't.
Yeah, I feel that it's almost impossible to actually apply my full effort to something that I don't care about. But when I do find something that I love and enjoy, it's just like it feels like a whole new part of me comes alive and is just like there and present. And I enjoy the process, and it feels like a good day as opposed to like being a servant to the machine.
Yeah, yeah. And you're like, what's the point of doing something like if you can't do your best? I'm sure that's like probably a pretty cliche saying that's probably not fully true. But I think it really comes down to just identifying tasks that energize you and identifying things that drain you. And I spent a long period of time doing this where I just spent like a month and a half of like any time that I did something that either put my energy above or below baseline, I documented it. It's like, what was I doing? It was like the who, what, when, where, why. Like, who was I doing with? What was I doing? When was I doing it? Where was I doing it? Why was I doing it? And then I just found like there's a bundle of tasks that makes me feel awful and it ruins the rest of my day because it like uses up all my energy. And then there's these other tasks that just light me up. Like I do them and I'm so ready to just crush the rest of the day. So I started optimizing for those tasks and I started delegating and abdicating those tasks that drain me and automating them. And like I just found my output was way higher, my stress was way lower, and like my perceived level of work on a daily basis was abysmal because I was enjoying everything that I was doing. So it was like it's such a cheat code. Like if you can just optimize for doing stuff that you like to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Do you have a larger mission or vision that's sort of driving you forward, or is it strictly 100% focused on following that curiosity, following that energy, following that aliveness?
Self-exploration, man. I honestly just want to like, yeah, I'm pretty young still too, so it's like I honestly just want to explore more. What's out there in the world, like what piques my interest at any given time. I used to be like very binary, all or nothing. So I was like, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna have to do it for the rest of my life, and that would just leave me with like identity crises every 3 to 6 months because I'm like, I'm getting into user experience design because I used to design software. I used to build like SaaS, and I was like, all right, cool. Now I'm a UX designer. So I'd like go on Tinder and I'd like change my occupation to UX designer, and I'd like make it my whole identity. And then 3 months go by, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I went through that initial growth curve where it's fun because I was learning really fast, and now it's in that echelon where it's like it's the grind mode. Like you have to put so much more time and effort to continue and improve. I'm like, okay, cool. Like there goes my whole identity. But now it's yeah, just like accumulating skills, um, wandering, exploring. I guess my biggest I read this book. It was called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And that kind of changed my perspective on like passion. Because when I left cybersecurity, I'm like, I'm gonna go follow my passion. And that just ended up in me like training martial arts like 4 hours a day and cooking, 2 hours a day, which really didn't get me anywhere. I was like, oh, that sucks. But it was like, don't worry about passion. Focus on building skills and career capital. So then when you do inevitably naturally fall in line with your passion, you'll have all the skills necessary to fully take advantage of it. That kind of changed my perspective. I just started focusing on building skills that I was innately good at, that, finding those things that you're good at and that you enjoy that other people don't like. Um, but sorry, that was a long-winded way of saying I think health education is like the biggest thing for me. That's like what really gets me going. I try to identify those things that I would stay up late for, right? Because I like getting my sleep. I've never really been one to like stay up late unless there's big deadlines. Like I've never pulled all-nighters in college for studying, but like I'll stay up super late just like researching esoteric health topics on like certain compounds like taurine or like vitamin B deficiencies and just think about how to like best present that in a way that makes sense to the end consumer. So I'd say like that's probably my deepest passion, just like helping people with their health because it's really difficult and confusing, but once you understand it, things just start to click and then it just becomes like second nature, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. I've experienced that myself where it's a lot like driving a car. First, you have to learn, okay, this is the steering wheel, this is the brake, this is the gas, this is where you shift. And then first it's like real clunky, like, okay, this here, and then all of a sudden you're just driving and you're like also texting and also like eating a burrito and it's second nature completely. And on the health education piece, that's definitely a powerful path. I know you're already making some steps and some waves along that, creating some content online and sharing your own process of mastery of the health game. And I think Tony Robbins says some of the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities, and we certainly have a heck of a challenge in our hands in the health of our human family. So it's a certainly a powerful path to walk on.
Yeah, man. You know what I think is so beautiful about it is it can never be cracked. Like you can't solve the code for health because it's so subjective. It's so, individual dependent. But also the literature and the common like the like common knowledge is changing on a daily basis, right? Like I look at some of, the leading figures within health and nutrition, and they're like, I can't keep up. New studies are coming out every single week that are debunking like previous thought, like, the previous status quo. So it's so fascinating to me because you can never get bored. And I find there's always new areas of improvement because, like I said, I get bored of things really quickly. I want to move on really quick. I'm okay with like dropping everything and like starting everything, but man, I've been training and I've been like fixated on health for the last decade, like literally 10 years now. And I've never gotten sick of it. Like I've never missed a week of training. I've never missed a week of like being like intuitive eating, right? Like eating for the sake of like thinking about what is this fuel that I'm giving my body. And I think that's important. I think that's really important, like to because like it doesn't feel like any like effort or work on my end. So I'm like, okay, cool. I should probably follow that.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely observed you just really really light up there too. It's palpable the passion you have for it and the energy that it brings to you. It's I caught a piece of that too. And where do you think that came from? Have you experienced health challenges yourself personally, or have you observed friends or family go through some health challenges? Where do you think that emerged from?
Yeah, great question. 100%. Like, first off, I was really small as a kid, so like everybody has core memories, and so many of my core memories were like me getting pinned in wrestling by a bigger guy, or me getting like thrown around on the football field, or like me in lacrosse just being like mocked, like mocked because like I couldn't do anything. And that feeling of helplessness and that feeling of weakness just stuck with me. And I just hit a breaking point. I was like 14, 15. And I was like, I refuse to like be helpless in that matter. And like, it was kind of like just intuitive stoicism where it's like, what's in my control? Like, what can I actively change? I can change two things. I can change the output of like what I do with my body and the input of what I take in. So I started just getting like obsessed with like weightlifting and like nutrition. Like I was just pounding chicken breast and rice, working out like all the time in my bedroom, like push-ups and pull-ups in my bedroom, doing shit like that, like just, like training martial arts on like a little punching bag. And I just became obsessed with it because it was like something that was in my control. And that was just such a good feeling. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I was obsessed with it, all throughout high school. Went from being like a scrawny little stick to like being, looking back now, I was like, damn, like I was jacked. Like I was in really good shape. But I wasn't healthy. I was in good shape. I wasn't healthy. Like I had a lot. I was still like depressed, anxious. I was still like my primary care provider would just like douse me Adderall and like all these drugs, which I didn't take much, but like I still had those issues. Like I was not healthy. I had like really high levels of inflammation, chronic fatigue, definitely vitamin D deficiencies. Like I was still eating processed foods, like just ripping protein shakes with a bunch of preservatives in them. And it started to catch up to me in college. That coupled with like alcohol and like all the bad things that you do in college, sleep deprivation and, dining hall food. And it was actually a series of concussions that made me hyper attuned to what I was eating. Got some really nasty concussions consecutively, and that's when it gets bad when they're back to back. And like I found my verbal fluency was affected, my memory was heavily affected, and I just noticed like when I ate things after that, it would be so much more of an effect that like I couldn't ignore. I'd eat gluten and I'd have the worst brain fog ever, right? Like I'd eat a lot of refined carbohydrates and my energy levels would be spiked and crazy. So that really made me focus in on like identifying like not just eating for physical prowess, which is what I always did, but like focusing on the mental side of things, right? Like your brain uses up so much of the energy that you're consuming. It's something like 30% of all carbohydrates that you consume, or all glucose, I guess. But that's when I like completely switched over to the more like what you would call like the biohacking aspect. And it just really came back down to that. It's like, okay, there's certain things in my life that I can't control. Like I feel a certain way. What can I do about it? Right? What can I do about it? And the most easy application was like I can exercise and I can eat properly. I can supplement properly. Now it's obviously a progression. Now it's more about lifestyle as well, because I think that's equally as important. And like digging into like the biological effects that lifestyle has on you from anything of like, we always talk about it on Twitter, sun exposure, grounding, all those things, equally, if not more important than the nutrition and supplementation aspect of things.
Wow. Yeah, it's wild to hear you talk about suffering loss of verbal fluency after getting two concussions because your verbal fluency now is really on point, like top 1%. You're just like rattling off these sentences that are just like fully formed, fully written out, like edited sentences that yeah, it's quite a stark contrast from suffering head trauma, which can really be debilitating long term. To it seems like you've completely healed that, or at least gotten pretty close to 100% back.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's one of those things where it's a daily challenge, right? It's because there's the uncertainty aspect of it. It's like, am I feeling loopy and unfocused because of this concussion? Or is it because I had a bagel? Or is it because I spent too much time on TikTok, right? So it's like
Yeah.
part of me, I think about it every day. It's like, what kind of cognitive changes happened after getting those concussions? I also train a lot of martial arts, so I am occasionally getting hit in the head, and I notice that my threshold for brain trauma is significantly lower. Normally, I could get, rocked with a fucking bowling ball in the head and be fine. But now, I get like one crisp uppercut and I go to bed that night and like I can feel it in my eyes. So it's definitely still a worry. Like honestly, it's probably what takes up most of my mental space is like, did I just get hit in the head again? Like, is this going to affect me long term? But to me, I actually find it vindicating. Vindicating is not the right word. I find it like motivational because when I realize it's like, okay, maybe I did have some brain injury, some inflammation that may have damaged my brain. It sent me into the deepest rabbit hole of everything neurogenesis, right? Like, how can I regenerate my brain cells? How can I prevent future neurodegeneration? And in doing that, I think I really became more just from using my brain to dig deep into that science and literature and doing all these like brain training exercises and things like that. I think my cognition improved, but you never know, right? And I now it's like, okay, there's no point in dwindling over it. Like if it happened, it happened. I can just only focus on what's moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's now I'm contemplating how a lot of these health strategies, wellness tactics, a lot of them are rooted in sort of what is ancient and old and ancestral. And we find ourselves in this modern world, like you said, too much time on TikTok or the bagel. And it's like, how the,
The fucking
what is,
bagel.
like, what is that all? How the hell did we get from like cavemen, probably pretty healthy, or not even cavemen. There's, that's there. I doubt we had any ancestors who were cavemen. That would be more of like the Neanderthals who were kind of killed off by our ancestors. We were more of like just roaming nomads. Maybe coastmen for a while, living on the ocean, but mostly kind of like Native Americans for a long time, just living off the land, eating animals and eating outside. And now we've got to deal with like all this technology and crappy food. Like, how does I feel like a lot of this comes to a meshing and integrating of an understanding between what's old and what's new, and navigating that.
100%. Yeah, I definitely think we were cave dwellers at one point. I mean, we were mating with Neanderthals. I've definitely got some Neanderthal in me. So, but yeah, man, I think about that all the time. I always had this idea when I was a little kid that it felt right to want to live like our ancestors. I always thought about it. I'm like, man, like I don't want to be sitting behind a desk. Like I want to be roaming fields. I want to be hunting animals. Like I want to just be outside all day naked. And it was always so taboo. Like I thought I was weird for that. I thought it was just some weird figment of my imagination. I was always obsessed with evolution. I went to a Catholic school. They pretty much damn near taught creationism in our biology class. So when I was exposed to it, I was like, oh my God. And like when I was in Bangkok, I was primarily studying anthropology and evolutionary biology. So going out and like having, first of all, the coolest teacher ever explaining, like, yo, this is why you like big breasted women. Like, this is why having like a strong bone structure is attractive. This is why these smells make you feel this way. And I'm like, holy shit. It wasn't until I went to Peru and I spent like 2 weeks in the jungle, like doing like a ceremony of sorts that like it really clicked. I'm like, this is right. Like this is correct. My hypotheses were right. It wasn't just me being stupid. So since then, it's like, okay, cool. We live in a modern world. Modern problems require modern solutions. I'm going to accept that. But I do believe that the closer that I can align my lifestyle with that's evolutionary accurate, how we're, designed and engineered to live, the happier I'll be. And so far, it's been spot on. Like from a healing standpoint in general, it's like, wow, this is right. Granted, like I said, modern problems require modern solutions. There's fucking lead and aluminum in our rain. There's, heavy metals in our water, and there's no minerals in the soil. So you need to accept that as well. So I think there's really a balance that you can make of being evolutionarily accurate. It's a tongue twister, but also accepting that, it does require extra help. Like my supplement, like half of my suitcase is supplements, supplements and herbs and all those things, because I understand that one, I have innate nutritional deficiencies because of my upbringing, right? Antibiotics as a kid, diet that I had as a kid, certain drugs that I was on as a kid, like those directly affect me. So I need to do something about that. But at the same time, like me just go standing in the grass and getting some sun is going to probably help me more than all those drugs combined.
Yeah, it's something that is free. So it's not top of mind for a lot of people because they aren't being there's no advertisement on TikTok that's saying, "Hey, have you gone out into the sunshine today and gotten any of that healing energy?" Because if not, you should. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, man, we are so wired to think that anything that works has to cost a lot of money. It's just consumerism. That's just how we think because everybody's skeptical of convenience. Everybody's skeptical of like things that work too quickly, that make too much sense. Like, okay, no way. You're telling me that like if I don't eat anything, that it's gonna make me feel better, in terms of fasting. It's like, yeah, yeah. But like, yeah, how we say this, I've tweeted this probably like 30 times, but like all the best like biohacks, I use those in parentheses because I think it's kind of a cliche term. They're free, right? Like cold exposure, heat exposure, zone two cardio, sun exposure, grounding, the list goes on, not eating. Like most of these biohacks will save you money. And, that's why I think especially you have two options. You can either just go and try to live as evolutionary accurate as possible. Go move somewhere where you have constant exposure to nature. You're getting all three spectrums of sunlight, constant sun exposure, like go shower in the ocean. Or you can live in a city and spend thousands and thousands of dollars for all these really advanced tools that just replicate what you'd be getting in nature anyway, right? Like grounding mats, red light therapy, all of these water filtration systems. So I think about that all the time because I want all of these new tools. I want all of these biohacking tools. And I'm like, or I could just go like live on the beach for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy how a lot of these really expensive biohacking tools, and that's a fascinating term as well, because I think the word hack sort of implies that like we're using this thing kind of like not in the way that it's supposed to be used, when another way we're sort of like just bio harnessing or like bio harmonizing. And yeah, it's an important it's words are so important the way that they're framed. I feel like health, just the whole concept of health often gets a bad rap for being lame and like something that is requiring sacrifice, when I think you and I both know that's not the case, and it's sort of this like secret that's being shared and is growing in volume.
Yeah, 100%. I think in terms of like semantics, yeah, biohacking does have a negative connotation for reasons. You have all these holistic health people that are like, it's not hacking, it's optimizing. I like what you say, bioharmonization. I don't know, for me, it's just like what I've used for the longest time. I used to be really big into nootropics, still am, but more from a research standpoint. I don't really leverage them just because like anything with a strong biological effect is likely going to have a strong biological effect on a different pathway that you don't anticipate. So like for example, Rogaine's a perfect example. I think initially it was used for like blood pressure, and then they started administering it and like, oh shit, like this makes people really hairy. Like methylene blue, one of the most potent synthetic nootropics. It was initially used to like clean like scuba tanks or like fish tanks. So like I'm just going to say like yeah, potent substances usually have a downstream negative effect. But yeah, I like biooptimization is probably more accurate. Bioharmonization sounds really cool.
Wasn't Viagra one too, where it was maybe for like blood thinning or something, and then just like, whoa, this guy's got a wild boner.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's always how it is, dude. Like all of the best drugs that are like most effective usually weren't started like for that reason. It was usually something completely different. Like, yo, I've been hard for like 4 hours, bro. Like, what's up with this? My blood. So yeah, it's hilarious. Pharmaceuticals are terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, they are those. It's sort of like the opposite of a lot of what we're talking about in many ways, where it's like, well, I'm gonna charge you a lot of money to take this solution that'll be quicker and more convenient. I promise. Don't even look at this 5-page side effects sheet. Don't even think about that. Look, there are people playing in a field, whisper, and then they're whispering, "Oh, by the way, you may have suicidal thoughts and
Yeah.
depression." It's terrible.
It's crazy. And it's crazy how we're just habituated to scrolling past that part. Because every single football game, it's like 30%, 30 to 70% of the commercials are for pharmaceuticals. And we don't even bat an eye. It's like, cool, like, way to go. Wellbutrin will make you happy. It also might make you want to kill yourself. And it's just like some lady holding a kid. Like, it's baffling. Yeah, big pharma sucks. I personally am like a victim. I'm not gonna say a victim. I was affected by big pharma, right? Like a primary care provider that was literally just dishing me out drugs that I didn't need for no reason. She had no idea what they were. I remember it very vividly. Like she'd give me fucking like prescription meth, which is amphetamine salts. It's almost molecularly identical to meth. And then she's like, "How are you sleeping?" And I wasn't really even taking it. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sleeping fine." She's like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna prescribe you some beta blockers anyway, in case you need them to sleep." And like giving all of these to a kid during their adolescence, well, their brain is still developing. You know, like our brains develop pretty late into our 20s and even past that. And like giving drugs that literally alter your neurochemistry is so fucked up. So yeah, I think that's like if I have one gripe, if I have one like burning hatred, it's towards like the modern medicine system. I'm not saying like don't take antibiotics if you have a life-threatening staph infection. Do that. Just like make it a last line of defense. No one said like, hey, maybe you should just go play more sports, go outside more, and maybe not spend your entire winters in, the Arctic tundra where you get like 3 hours of sunlight a day. That was never a question. And I was still eating, Uncrustables and Pop Tarts for breakfast. And I was like, you guys suck. So yeah, I have some gripes, but I digress.
Yeah, for the right reasons, and unfortunately, I think something like 100 to 200 million Americans own at least one prescription, if not more, and aren't even aware of these consequences, and they just get more prescriptions, just like you said. These people are just popping out scripts, and aren't really thinking about the consequences. And yeah, it's really important that we get the word out, that we raise awareness about these better alternatives, because they really are better in every way.
Yeah. And what you mentioned earlier about health being boring, I think that's the biggest problem because we have to look at what other alternatives are we up against in terms of content. Like I run a marketing agency. I think of everything from a marketing standpoint. I've been doing marketing for like 6 years. So like understanding how to grab people's attention, right? It's really tough to do. It's tough because you're up against like a lot of like sexual innuendos all the time. Like all these things that are just hacking your body's like your brain's natural pathways. So it's like, oh cool, like some chick dancing, or it's like, oh, some dude like fail blogging and like getting hit by a car, or like some like kitten videos. Those are really tough to compete against when we're talking about like mitochondrial dysfunction or like why you should have taurine. And the issue is because nutrition is so complex, because health in general is so complex, the people who really know their shit are usually lab rats, right? They have, multiple degrees. They've spent all their time researching. When you spend all that time researching, your brain starts thinking in that very complex vernacular. So you really only know how to explain that to other people at that level of education. I think the real challenge and the real opportunity and the real solution to health education is to make it sexy, is to make it enticing, to make it better than like chicks dancing on TikTok or cat videos. And that comes down to marketing. That comes down to taking these complex technical features and conveying them as benefits to the end consumer in a way that's entertaining, informative, and convincing. So, like me, I used to work in threat intelligence. Sounds super cool on paper. I thought it was cool when I was in college. It's really not that cool. Like, it's so boring. It's so overly technical. But I was building a product that was meant for like high level IT directors. So I needed to find a way to convey all that highly technical information as end feature benefits. And it's really the same formula for health. It really is. Like hacking in cybersecurity sense and biohacking in like the health sense, quite similar.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about, especially over time. I remember growing up, like you mentioned earlier, chicken breast and rice was the way, and sort of the health promoters were more of like, I guess they had like kind of hippie vibes, where they're sort of like like, yeah, be one with the earth and be healthy, man, and don't eat red meat. And that was sort of like the kind of the idea. Now you've got the Liver King on on TikTok, shirtless, just like lifting weights and eating like a raw liver, and it's so funny how much it has changed with the times and with our scarce attention. And I don't know where it's going to go from here, but hopefully, I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad to have people just like shirtless and shoeless, like eating raw meat in public. I'm not sure if that turns more people off than it turns them on, but it certainly has an impact. It certainly grabs
It's
attention.
it's definitely polarizing, and a lot of these people are charlatans. I think Liver King, for example, he brings up a lot of great points. I think his core tenets of like whatever the primal lifestyle, yeah, they're pretty on point. But he also obviously does PEDs, and he's probably the least charming person I've ever heard talk. I listen to him talk, I'm like, dude, what like I, I don't know if he got hit in the head a lot as a kid or what, but I just listen to him talk. I'm like, this is so unenticing to me. But yeah, I mean, like these guys know marketing. They know that polarization works. And I think the most important thing is like any engagement is good engagement in the beginning. Any exposure is good exposure because it's going to get people attuned to the idea. They may not agree with it, but at least it's on their radar. So they're going to be able to start like chewing on it in their head, considering it. Next time they see liver at the store, they're going to think of Liver King or Paul Saladino and they'll be like, all right, those guys are fucking crazy. Maybe I'll try this. But I think most importantly is this idea of Overton's window, right? It's used a lot in politics where it's like, I'm going to say something super extreme and go super crazy just to like move the status quo and the idea of normalcy a little bit further up. So like if Liver King says, don't eat any vegetables, eat raw liver, like live outside, don't wear any sunscreen, never shower, smell like dog shit all the time, do all these things, they're gonna be like, that's crazy. I'm not going to do that, but maybe I'll have a little bit more grass-fed beef for my next meal, right? So that's obviously crazy. That's obviously over the top. But it makes those other key points that he talks about a little bit less crazy. It's like, all right, no, no, no. Like, I'm definitely going to shave my balls. Like, I'm going to use shampoo still. And I'm probably going to wear sunscreen. And I'm also going to sleep on a bed. But maybe I'll turn my Wi Fi router off tonight. So it gets people attuned to the idea and it makes, like, these small nuggets less crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. He's like, politicians are doing this every, it seems like every election cycle, they just get zanier and zanier, crazier and crazier with like more bombastic ideas, and they're just like shifting the narrative and polarizing the people. And the same similar thing is happening with the diet world, where like it seems like vegans are getting crazier and crazier, and then also like sort of the carnivore movement has arisen as sort of like a counterbalance to that. And yeah, it's pretty wild to see the spectrum of different options within the movement.
Yeah, it's horrible. I think it's one of the worst things about humanity that moderation does not get publicity. Nobody wants to hear a moderate. Nobody wants to say, yeah, there's benefits of plants and there's benefits of meat. Everybody wants extremists. Everybody listens to extremists. And I think a lot of it is also like idealism. It's ideologues. People looking for an identity, finding it, and then putting their entire self-worth into it, right? Like that's with vegans. Vegans are applauded by their community for being vegan, for making that their entire identity, for wearing shirts like, some bullshit shirt talking about like their veganism. I think that's stupid. I think it's so stupid to tie your identity to some activity or some diet, especially because now if you become exposed to new information that goes against that, you have to deal with that situation of like, do I want to trust this information that I know is true and that I have, that like the study shows that, this is the case, or do I want to follow my identity? Right? There's a lot of cases of vegans who become exposed to new information or try out new diets. They're like, hey, listen, I started incorporating salmon in my diet and I feel like $1 million. Like all of these issues that I had are gone. They do that and they get, excommunicated by that community, or they follow the science. So yeah, like, man, I'm so not about like making your diet your identity. I eat a lot of meat and fruit now, but I'm constantly experimenting. I don't think that my health is ideal. I've been incorporating certain vegetables for their, therapeutic purposes. I consume a lot of herbs, tea all the time, coffee. But none of that's my identity. I could very much see myself going a month like not eating meat just to try it out.
Yeah, it's so important. I wish more people would emulate what you're doing with that, where you're just trying things out. You don't gotta hold on to these beliefs so hard and you don't have to white knuckle your beliefs. It's so helpful to try different things and see where it leads. Be more curious. Leading with curiosity first versus like, no, I know everything, and I'm going to tell you what I know because it's important. And it's like, whoa, relax, take a breather. There's a lot going on here.
It's tough, man. It's tough because everybody has identity crises. Everybody's looking for an identity. That's why religion's so enticing. I used to be like I grew up, like in between two religions. My mom's Persian, my dad's German, so like Catholic and like some small like mountain religion from Iran. So I was like in between them. I was never really part of either of them, and it always made me like want to be part of one because there was like such a huge identity aspect, right? Like Sunday school, like having this community. And then I got like really sour towards it after going to like a Catholic school. But like once I got out, I'm like, oh, like this makes total sense. Like it's so great and so much easier to go through life with a sense of identity and a sense of like moral scaffolding. And I think like some people extrapolate that to diet as well. I mean, even CrossFit, like CrossFitting's a religion. It's people who like ex-athletes that lost their identity because they played, football in college and now they're doing nothing, working a 9 to 5, and like they take CrossFit as like their new identity, their new religion.
Yeah, identity is everything when it comes to habit change as well. It's such a keystone way to become a different person, to up-level your habits is not to be like, I'm not smoking cigarettes. You say, no, I don't smoke cigarettes. Like I'm not a person that smokes cigarettes. It's not like a intermediary thing. It's like, no, this is me. This is me. This is who I am. And then like so much action kind of stems from that.
Yeah, that's such an effective tool. I use it all the time, and it's like pretty crazy because it just incorporates so many aspects, right? Like you say that to someone, and then now you have like social pressure to like avoid cognitive dissonance, which everybody hates. Yeah, it's super effective. I got to start using that more.
What do you think about your life up to this point? Do you feel like you are maximizing your potential, or do you fear that you're leaving some potential on the table at this point?
Definitely not maximizing my potential at all. Um, definitely need to be doing more. And like I put it off. Um, yeah, no, definitely not maximizing my potential.
Wow,
Absolutely not.
why do you think that is?
I know I could be doing more. Like I know I've had glimpses of when I was on, like when I was really on top of my shit and I was like dialed in to what I was doing and I was 100% in and I was unbeatable, man. Like I could do anything. I literally accomplished everything that I wanted and like I grew so quickly in such a short period of time. I'm not at that point right now. Like I'm I see complacency. I see complacency and I see untapped potential in my daily routines and my daily habits. And I know it all stems down to my systems, right? Like I'm not goal oriented. I believe like you don't rise to the levels of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. It's all about that identity. I'm not taking advantage of that identity, like of who I could be, of who I know I could be, and who I've been in the past. So that's what I'm really working on. And it's tough. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. It's like this gnawing, for me at least it feels like this gnawing in the background that's like, no, you could do more here. You could do a little bit better. And it's just like I'm trying, but then it's like, are you trying? And it's like where's that like what are you trying to do? And like where's that switch to turn on? It's such a fascinating sort of inner game. At least that part of life is I'm so fascinated by it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like that's really like I'm a very extroverted person. I spend like I love talking, I love personalizing, but like most of my day is just spent with that internal dialogue of like you're not doing enough, like you're not doing it right. And I know it's true. And people are like, "Oh, don't be so hard on yourself." I'm like, "I'm not being hard on myself. I know this is true." Like if someone were to follow my day, they'd be like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like you are not taking advantage of the opportunities in front of you." And man, that just makes it so much worse because like if your biggest fear is not reaching your potential, not getting to that level of self-actualization, and then you're presented with these opportunities and you don't take them, then it's like, really, like, what are you doing? I genuinely believe for me, it comes down to like not enough alignment. I do believe that I've been getting closer to alignment, right? I'm not the type of guy that can have work-life balance. I can't do work in one aspect and then go live another life. Like they have to be completely aligned. Like I do my best work on weekends. I spend all weekends working because that's when I do the best. Like I have no work life balance. Like I can't. It's not going to be the way that I'm going to achieve my full potential. So I really just think it comes down to alignment and maybe I think every time that happens to me, I just like get up and reset. I'll go move somewhere else. I'll like, switch up my whatever business model I'm running. So I think it might be time for that.
Where are you headed next?
Puerto Morel, actually, wait, I'm not going to dox where I'm saying, but a small fishing village in Mexico. Um, yeah, so
Awesome. I've if you're if I'm thinking of the same place that you're headed, that's a beautiful place. Have you been there before? Is this the first time that you've gone?
I've been there. I haven't lived there. But yeah, I like I don't think it's going to be the solution, but I do know that like a new person, like moving to a new place is the best way to start new habits, to build a new routine because it's uncomfortable. Everything's uncomfortable. Everything is new. And when things are uncomfortable as a baseline, doing other things that are uncomfortable or abnormal are really pretty easy because you have no like it's tabula rasa, it's blank slate. It's a lot harder to start a new habit when you're in the same apartment you've been in for the last 6 months, right? It's a lot harder to start building a reading habit on the couch that you watch TV on. So, like, if you move to a new place, new people, new environment, new you, get a new haircut, right? Put on some new clothes. It's a lot easier to like change up your routines, your habits, and your identity.
Yeah, pulling up the roots, getting yourself in a new plot, and then just feeling out where are the real nutrients in life? Where are the life ways that are really going to be nourishing me, who I am in this moment, and who I want to become, not who I have been, and kind of killing off that old Noah, the old self that had been like holding it back. It's such a difficult thing to do, but also it's doable. It's 100% doable.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. And like there's people that can do it without like it's so much easier to change your external environment than it is to change your internal psyche, right? So like that's why I started this whole travel thing. It's because like it's really easy to change who you are when you go up and move to like a new place, new culture, new identity, new language. Like change your name, right? Like I'll probably move there and I'll go by like Filiberto or something. And like it's so much easier to change like grow a mustache, like like I said, get a new haircut. And it's so much easier, so much easier.
It sounds like you're using travel as a biohack.
Sure, it is. Like it is the biggest life hack for me because anytime that I get complacent or I don't like the habits that I'm building, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna go move somewhere for 3 weeks, right? I'm gonna go move somewhere for a month. I'm just gonna like try. It's like I don't see it as like changing my identity. I see it as just trying out a new way of living. Like I'm gonna try to be this type of person this month, right? So like, who do I want to be? And I'll just write down like, okay, cool. Like I want to really be like a really hard worker this month. I want to be super regimented. I want to be very composed. I want to be very stoic. So I'll be this person this month. And then I'll try it at the end. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the things that I liked about that I can incorporate. It's like more of my habits and my overall identity. Here's the things that didn't work so well. Next week, it's like, all right, I'm just gonna go fully loose this week. Like I'm gonna be that guy that like, like talks to everyone, meets everybody, like says yes to every social opportunity and just like very easy going. And then I'll just like identify what worked with that and what didn't. So that's what I try. And like the best way to do that is just like going to a new place.
And that traveling is a real burst of novelty, which can be a catalyst for neurogenesis too, right? You're just developing all these new neural pathways, rewriting old ones, pruning and growing and blooming, and you must feel that at like a cellular level. You just feel alive.
I do, man. I love that you say that. And I think, you talk about a lot with training, right? Because it's the same thing with training. You have to switch it up. Your body and brain is really, really good at acclimating to whatever environment you're in. It's going to get super efficient and it's like, okay, cool. I'm good here. I don't need to grow anymore. I don't need to like expend extra biological energy to improve. When you go to a new place, like you feel it, man. Like I feel it. I feel it in the way that I light up with my environment like my eyes open up. I'm so much more creative. I'm so much more driven. I'm just so much more ambitious because it's like novelty, stimulation. Like that's what humans need. That's what humans evolved to desire for survival, right? Like we evolved like to be nomadic, to move to new environments. I think that's why we became like the most dominant species on the planet is because we were like the monkeys that were brave enough to go check out the Sahara because we're like, all right, there's not enough food here. There's too much competition. Let's go over here and check out what's over there. So we're really good at adapting. That's what helped us grow. That's what helped us evolve and become who we are today. So we need I believe that we need to replicate that. And that's why I like the whole nomadic living. I don't think it's sustainable entirely. I do want to settle down eventually. But, for the next few years, I think nomadicism is the way to go.
Awesome. And I'm really looking forward to following along with what you're sharing as you go through that journey, as you go through that process. It's been awesome hearing you talk about your process with adaptation and evolution, and experiencing these different areas of life and the world. And man, it's a powerful story, and I appreciate you taking the time to share it with me today.
Yeah, Case, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed this conversation. You asked really great questions, so props to you for that, for sure. And we should definitely do this again. I'm looking forward to following along with your future interviews.
Thanks, man. We will definitely run this back. And signing out from America. Hope you have a great time in Mexico City.
Thank you, Case. I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Sounds good.